Hey y'all, John Duncan here. I was watching Brene Brown last night. She's written like 5 books. She's got a special on Netflix, and she's got a famous TED Talk where she talks about vulnerability. And after watching that, it reminded me, that yesterday during the day I had an appointment with a new client, and they had done quite well for what they do as far as financially. And they were where a lot of people are, where they had ambition to go higher, create some higher level wealth. And it was interesting because the wife said, we'd love to get into real estate, and we'll probably do that in a couple of years. Well, based on their financial position, they could start yesterday, like they were in really good position. And I explained to her the hardest money was the money you guys put together to get to where you are right now. Because what happens, and it's typically, as they all say, the first million is the hardest. And what happens after that is then if you continue to look at new things, keep your mind open, then all kinds of new doors open. And an example would be your credit capacity. So in her case, it would be no problem, in her and her husband's case, it would be no problem to secure a loan for the majority of their first rental property. And then, as I told her, once you get one, then you get two, then you get three, then you get four. And why is that important? Because real estate contains leverage. Real estate in itself is not a great investment. It grows, California, it's a little bit different, but in most parts of the country, it grows very slow compared to other things you could invest in. But what it contains is the ability to control a much larger asset for very little. An example would be, say, they went to Arizona and picked up a $200,000 property. And even if they put 30% down on a rental property, so they had some equity, you're talking $60,000 down to control a $200,000 asset. And then add in the deductibility of the interest and depreciation, etc. It's not that hard to see that that is a strong thing to do. Also, it takes them away from banking strictly on the market or on the dollar itself. They're diversifying into actual asset. So that said, the point of it is, like the Brene Brown talk, is that we are all, like, our brain is wired to protect us from losing. And what's crazy is a lot of us, when it comes to money, get so caught up in, if we get any success at all, we start getting caught up in almost like a fear that it could be taken away. So we start, instead of opening new doors, we start closing down and really shutting down. And what was great about the meeting with this couple yesterday, in my opinion, at the end of, after we had spoke, was just the joy they felt that someone had just told them, like, had given them the confidence to take the actions. And one of the points that she brought up that was interesting to me, she said, well, I really appreciate you giving us the courage to take more risk and go forward. And I said, no. You're missing the point. The point is that by adding, in this case, real estate, and start with 1 and get to 2, get to 3, get to 10, will you have more risk or less? And she thought about it for a minute. She said, well, I think we'd have less. I said, absolutely, you'd have less. And you would have way more working for you. And who's putting the majority of the money in? And she thought about it. The bank. That's right. The bank, not you. To get to that first million, and these people had way more than $1 million, but the first million was the hardest because the system, when you do not have money, is set up, just like when you're starting out in life. I mean, don't have income, don't have credit, don't have whatever. And as you start to succeed, start saving some money, start building up anything, what happens is doors start opening. And for this couple and for a lot of my clients, they don't realize the new doors that have opened to them. And the point of it is, if you shut down and cling to where you're at, you won't get anywhere. In fact, it could be taken away. I just saw a story this morning. Jeff Bezos, in 20 years, I mean, his net worth 20 years ago was $2 billion, which $2 billion, amazing. Now it's $150 billion. You can guarantee one thing: he did not shut down. And that shutdown is what the Brene Brown was talking about. It is that vulnerability. And a lot of people I see that are, to everyone else looking at it, they're super successful. But what in their own world, they are scared to death. And it's simply because they're uncomfortable. They were uncomfortable before they got some assets put together. Now that they have some assets, they're afraid it could be taken away. And if there's one thing I've learned, if you take somebody worth $1 million, somebody worth 10, somebody worth 100, somebody worth $1 billion, what I have learned is at every stage, the people are, the difference between the two is not what you would think it is. It's the difference is that they remained open to new possibilities. And at the same time, they realized that not everything's going to be black and white. Not every investment they put money into is going to work out. And they're good with that. Like they're willing to lose in certain, not all, but they're willing to lose sometimes. And a lot of people, and I think the middle class think is never to lose. It's black and white, never lose. And that restricts, out of fear, even considering things that, say you had 5 different things you were involved in and one of them didn't work out. Well, a billionaire looks at it as that's just the way it is. Somebody that is nowhere near that looks at it and says, that I'm out, for that I'm out. And to finish this, think of like the stock market 2007, 2008. How many people yanked every nickel out of the market and never returned? even though in that same amount of time, it came back and is bigger than ever. And it's like my old accounting teacher in college said, you don't win or lose in the stock market unless you cash out. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt when things go south, but the fact is people at the, Jeff Bezos, the reason he went from 2 to 150 is because he knew it's not if he's going to lose. He will lose certain things that he tries, but he's okay with that. And most people are not. And that's what the difference is. That's the difference maker. So with that, I hope you're having a great day. I'll talk to you soon. This is John Duncan.